So as we position ourselves on our chair, this is restorative bone therapy. So we do want to have a chair, and your chair seat might have a blanket on it today. If you're tall, I want you to put a quarter full blanket across the mat to sit onto for the first about, first fifth of the class. It's not going to be very long, but you might, play with it, have a blanket, and I'm short, so I don't find that would be very helpful for me at all, because then I can't really put my feet firm on the ground. And I want you to feel, so if your chair back is against the wall, which would be great to start, you can sit anywhere in the beginning though, perhaps, but I want you to set your feet out into a wide stance, okay? So you want to feel where your sitting space is. If you have a blanket, you need to be on the blanket, not kind of rolling off the back of it, so that the orientation of the knees is they point out, okay? Set your hands onto the knees, and you're going to make circular patterns. So I like to think of navel center rotating and going both directions eventually. But at first, I'm going to start going one direction for a while. So I want you to feel where your hands are just above the knee, where the heel of the hand is, and your fingers kind of cup around the knee itself. So notice the weight in the sitting bones, and it shifts, right? It doesn't stay grounded. It leans into one side and tilts and accentuates the movement of the ribs. Although I think this one takes time to get kind of circular in the rib cage. It's a good one to do. So go other direction. So shift the side that you're starting with the motion. It's similar, right? It's just a different direction to start. And the weight in your feet should be balanced. So maybe close your eyes and just take the motion and feel where you push into your feet, where the body weight is in the sitting bones from one to the next. And then start to come back in. So you're kind of winding up into center. Let your arms dangle down from the shoulders and lift the shoulders up. Pretty firm, pull up, shrugging up the shoulders towards the ears. Inhale, if you haven't started breathing yet. Exhale down. So I want you to focus on that big drop with the shoulders. So inhale, shoulders up. Exhale down. Okay, so feel once more. Exhale. Okay, now feeling where the chest spans open. Stretch your arms out, okay, and feel the height of the arms where it's balanced in your chest muscles. For some of us, it will be higher than the heart. Some of us will be a little lower, but span the arms back. And see if you can get your thumbs to kind of turn back to open up into the arms, into the shoulders. And just be willing to feel what arm gets the most intensity. One arm probably feels more than the other. Could be your non-dominant arm. Just doesn't have the experience of being so active. And then bring your hands forward, interlace your fingers at the roots, turn the hands inside out and actually press into your feet and round your back. So you're pushing forward with the hands and feeling a bit of a hollowing in the core of the body. Oh, it might not all hollow completely out, but you'll feel there's flexion in the spine. Lift up through the center of the body. Don't worry at all about how high the arms get. Just work on pressing in your sitting bones, lifting up in the core, and then lower the hands down. And we're going to turn towards our right. So the mirroring thing might be a little challenging, but I'm going to be cueing it exactly as I'm doing, and I hope you do. You're going to turn towards your right leg, and I want you, if you have a blanket on the chair, to sit onto that blanket and let the left leg stretch the femur back. So you get a feel of, like, let's just say you were kind of dangling the bone on the top of the above the knee. You're trying to angle that back and reach through the foot. So the toes are hooked under And you can stretch either the toes under, or it could be the top of the foot, right? I like toes under, but top of the foot, some people prefer. Turn towards your right and see if you can get a feeling now of the right hand back on the chair. Yeah, I suppose if you're right next to the wall, you have to be a little cautious of your fingers slipping to the chair, to the wall. But I do want you to first bring the left hand to the side, back of the chair, and the right hand to the other side of the back of the chair, and feel the centerpiece of the body. You're trying to get this rib space to lift up. So instead of hurting your knee and making that twist, you've got to isolate in the center. You've got to get the center body to turn right at the ribs, not at the lumbar. So the ribs turn right. And it seems like, can she get the point across? Is she trying to play a game and get the point across? Well, the ribs are the rotators. So feel where your left hand grips onto the chair. The right hand is balancing the twist. So it's not doing a whole lot. It's just holding. Breathing. Okay, now, as you come back towards the right thigh with both hands, see if you can balance leaning forward towards that right leg. So feeling that the knee connection is just above the ankle. That's not a feeling, but it's a direction. Okay, let the weight pour into that right thigh. Okay, and then let's come up for a moment. So you put your hands onto the seat, and if it's a little bit on the blanket, that's fine. But I want you to work your way of just basically pushing into your right foot and lifting your body off of the chair so the front of that back thigh is stretching. Be incredibly careful about your back knee. So I want to keep my left foot toes facing right towards that right side. Okay, now feel if you can basically let your body weight sink back to the seat, and then carefully bring the left foot to the center in front of you, turn forward, and then lean forward so that both feet press, both knees are centered. Let the body just hug in towards the legs. I mean, you could give your legs a hug if you want to. And then push back up and switch sides. Take the left foot over again. You might be on your blanket. And then you'll stretch the right leg and baby steps here. So maybe when I turn to the left, I just kind of feel where my pelvis is, where my ribs are. And then I take the chance of moving my right leg back. So if it's a bit of a bit of challenge in this leg, what you might work with is really getting that midsection to do its diligence about lifting upright, feeling the natural arch in the spine. You know, if the leg is challenged close to the knee, if it's achy, feel if you can do less of the pushing back with the foot. Maybe you let your right sitting bone be right on the edge of the chair and just let the leg dangle. It's okay. So kind of feel if you charge it back, if that's okay for the stretch, if you let the top of the foot rest. That feels better for me on this side. And then return to the left. So we'll take the left hand back on the chair, good, and the right hand, and feeling just that the arms, I don't know, I sense my arms are a little more connected into my ribs than like they're connected into my lumbar spine. They're just closer, right? That connection in my shoulders is connected to the ribs. It's kind of basic, I know, but it's nice to go, oh, I'm just going to keep it simple, even when I do my practice. This connects to this, connects to this. Let's keep it in that connection when we rotate to the left. Okay, and you decide with this back leg if the foot is toes under or if it's top of the foot down. It'd be difficult if you had shoes on to decide on those two, but if you're without shoes, you'll be good. So feeling where the spine pivots, be very kind of safe rotation. Don't overdo it. Just feel the basic motion of turning to the left. Breathing. Okay, now shift so that your left hand is maybe on the seat This one, you want your back foot toes under, and you're working your way towards lifting up. So I find if I lean forward and then I lift up, my feet fidget. They're not exactly still. They're not entirely stuck because they're living, right? It's a living body. So when it's living, it's going to respond to the stresses put on it, right? So when you reach back with that right thigh, how can you work on getting this thigh to stretch? Not so much how much can I bend my knee, but maybe I step my right foot a little bit in. Okay, so you'll feel the muscles, you'll feel both legs. Okay. Okay, I know you're kind of stepping in towards that left foot. So what we're going to do is we're going to step to that left foot, and then we're going to take a seat. I'm going to face this way for this one, but you'll still face where you are. But you're going to take a seat on the chair and get a ball and place it between the knees, right between the knees. Don't swerve your knees, but between the knees, and take a balance of squeezing and releasing. So you're simply, and this might be one where you toss your blanket. The blanket will not be that helpful anymore. Those other poses, great. But unless you love your blanket, it's a little bit more cushion. Okay, so alternate on the inhale, and then the exhale is squeezing. So meditate the movement path of breathing, and that breathing is kind of an inner squeeze of sorts. So alternate. So when my knees move out, it's inhale. When the knees squeeze in, it's exhale. Okay, try to keep that going when you stretch your hands back to the seat of the chair and gradually open the chest. Now the chair back is not as wide as you could use for opening the chest, but we just don't have chair seats that are way out here, right? So what I want you to factor in is simple, alternating, squeezing the ball, and that the arms aren't slouching your shoulders forward. That's it. Could be the most easy instruction. Okay, now we're going to center squeezing into the ball. See if you can just hold that and then continue the breath cycle. Belly soft. Okay, now relax the pressure into the ball and turn to the right. You'll bring your left hand to the side of the right leg. I don't want to say knee, but some of you have a longer reach, so you might be touching your knee. But when you squeeze into the ball now, the aim is that both knees aim forward right away from the wall. And when you turn, it's that rotation. So it's kind of elementary, the things we do, right? We keep things aiming this way, then we turn this way. It's like driving the body. We're taking a driver's test, body driver's test. Okay, now as you turn back forward, bring the right arm over the left, giving yourself a hug. Keep it simple so that now you relax the squeeze perhaps on the ball. And feel if you can let your elbows lift up and reach your hands farther around the back. It's hard to get very far around. They won't meet behind your back. Maybe somebody's does, right, with the arm length. I suppose it could happen. I don't think I've seen it before, but when you reach around, feel the shoulder, the muscles in the back. I want you to feel that they actually shift downwards, or you clutch them. Now turn your waist to the left. Let your right hand lower down besides the left leg. It's on the leg though. Left hand reaches back for the chair seat behind you and twist to the left, but squeeze into the ball again. Okay, so when you rotate, notice if you zigzag in the legs. You want them to, aim away from the wall, but feeling that awareness building up in the hips. Breathe. The left hand comes out to the left side, left arm crosses forward, hugging, left arm on top. Now slide your feet forward, so you still have the ball between the knees. Slide your feet forward and lift the elbows up. Okay, see if you can manage the core motion of the breath with the belly. So it's challenging not to maybe think pulling it in is the best route, but keep the motion of the belly. Okay. Now, when you release the grip of the arms, roll the shoulders, let the shrug be movable right into your back, rolling. And then slide the feet back in, knees pointing forward, taking the ball away. You know what I was doing yesterday, kind of playing with, I used to do this a while ago in a class where I put the ball under my leg and work on, leg extensions kind of workout. We're not going to add it in today, but I just want to add that to your, repertoire of things to do when you're just hanging around, because this is a good way to kind of massage into these tissues, and it's easy going. It's easy peasy, but it's also an interesting way to work your hip flexor and contemplate that hip flexor. So something to add on. Now, taking the ball away, grab your bolster, and you're going to cross the right foot up over to the left leg. So the knee motions out. You're in a figure 4 pose. And then move the bolster in front of you and have the bolster be tipped up. So you have the short end of the bolster under your hands. That would be funny if it was turned this way. That would be kind of difficult. But when you lean forward, the work is already there, right? You can feel it in the right hip. So feeling that centering of the sitting bones, the movement of the breath. Yeah, take a good full heaping tablespoon of breath. And when you're leaning forward, there may be an arc here, right? So when you shift, let the weight lean into the bolster. You could pull the bolster closer to your left foot if that helps you. You could kind of go, maybe that's better for you. So you decide on how you position your bolster. When you lean forward, let the body weight shift into that right leg or the right hip. Left foot is parallel. It should be pretty perfect here. Nothing turns out on the left foot. Okay, now come back center. Keep these armpits loaded here with this circulation. So shift so the left foot is up to the right leg. Now, I sometimes like to do a little contrast and compare, do the first side, and then before I stay with the second side, just kind of feel where in the knee is this feeling? What pattern of movement is helpful? So maybe sitting up tall, flexing the left foot is great. It's protecting your knee. It's just that you have to keep doing it. So if it gets sleepy on the direction, it's helpful for our circulation around the knee joint. So leaning forward. Now there's a possibility the bolster's not going to work as well for you. So some of us might be fine here, flexing the foot and leaning forward without the bolster. Some might even hold the side of the chair. And this is good because the shoulders motion to the sides and back. I like this one too. The difference with the bolster is I kind of do a little bit more hip. Seems more hip dense. I'm not sure if it is truly more hip dense. I think it is a little bit. Okay. Now we'll stay with the bolster in front. If you put it aside, get the bolster back to the front of your chair in front of you. And then uncross that left foot, step the feet just to the edges of the mat, not any farther out. So they're pretty parallel. When you lean forward, I want you to alternate these motions. So have the bolster in just the right distance. So for some of us, I could have my bolster a little closer and have an easier experience of alternating forward and back. So it feels a little bit like cat-cow, but the spine is not doing a lot of flexing. Some of you might have a rounded back in this position, but I think as you mature in the practice, most people eventually find that the spine extends. Although it takes time, doesn't it? It takes sometimes years. Okay, so feel that alternating pattern of pressure in the feet and the seat. Okay, now see how this transfers to the floor. So I think the bolster knows what to do. It just drops. But you're gonna let the bolster go down and maybe kick it a little forward so that you'll have some space for your knees. And I would be setting up so that I have a blanket right where my feet are, really, kind of inside, right next to my bolster. So that's where my knees are going to plunk down, okay? If you don't usually use a blanket very often for this part, you can pass on it. Some of you don't even let your knees go down to the ground, and that's okay. But keep in mind, if I scoot my feet back here, this is putting a little pressure on my knee. So what I want you to do is when you launch forward, you're going to stretch your feet back, not push them forward, and lower down and take a plank pose curve. So that means no knees stay on the ground. So I take the hands out as wide as the mat. The pinkies are off the edge. Okay, then lift the knees up and feeling where your balance is in your hands. It's pretty heavy, probably in the hands. And if there's any ability to distribute back into your feet. Swoop forward, so like an up dog, lower down onto the bolster and the blanket. Let the toes stretch back, so they're kind of pointy. You know, they feel almost pointy. And then lift up the chest muscles. Okay, stay here for a few moments where you're accessing that strength in the back. Okay, let's take some baby steps here. So when you lower down, if your bolster doesn't feel like it's in the right spot underneath you, you can always slide it forward or back. Usually it's not always perfect for me, but then I adapt in time. So when you lower down the waist, then bring your arms back so they're not touching anything, right? They're straight back by the sides. And the palms, it could be closed. You could make fists. You could let the fingers go together. What I like to do sometimes is to bring my hands touching to my back. So my knuckles are just right at the rim of the back, the buttock, right? So kind of the eyebrows of the buttocks, right? So they're up high, they're not in the center. And I'm trying to smooth that connective tissue downwards. Not that it's going to do much movement, but I don't want it to creep up and tighten my back. So I'm breathing. Ultra respiratory workout here. Okay, the shoulders might be dropping down because your elbows are back. Okay, now when you lower down your hands, bring your elbows forward on the floor in front of the bolster in Sphinx pose, and let your chin relax down. Let the neck lengthen. Relax your feet. And feel the breath in the centerpiece of the body. So it's along the strip of the middle back, right behind the heart. And also you might be lucky and feel the breath in the belly pushing into the bolster. So be sure to let your neck relax though. That's the key on this one. You know, once you're here for just 30 seconds, you'll notice the arms could start to tire out. So you want to use them as posts, okay? So that we're working the circulation. And so like, for instance, if you're doing like a yin yoga, you're working the yin meridians, the connective tissue, so you'd be maintaining the shape to keep that circulation field. right, awake. So we're kind of doing that in some of these, but when you slide the hands back by the bolster, you're gonna lift up to arch the spine. It's also arching and flexing the breathing muscles. That sounds kind of nice. I like to think of that. And then when you come back to table, notice how your knees might have to kind of shuffle in. Just kind of feel, okay, what if you don't do that? Just doesn't feel quite right. So scoot the knees in so they're stacking, the hips are stacked above the knees. And then round your back into cat, even though there might not be a cat. Inhale, arch the spine. So feel movement of the spine, alternate for about 3 more times. Push the floor away. Inhale. Chest goes forward, hips move a little bit back. It's pretty subtle. Exhale. One more time, inhale. And exhale, and feel how the movement of the hips. So this last motion is what we'll do is take the right foot to step forward and let's move the bolster away. I don't think we need this right now. So scoot your right foot into center. And if you want blocks, get them under your hands to step into the lunge. So I have to have my blocks kind of, the second setting works for me. The third is great too, but I'm okay with working a little bit more with it, more intense. So lift the back knee and get a feel when that right knee is just above the ankle. Kind of look at your knee. Look pretty stacked above. Okay, manage that the knee stays bending right there. Don't let it flinch back. Then you're loading into this right heel and then back into the hip. So if I take my right hand up, I can feel that I basically have 2 posts to balance on, my foot and my left hand. So I want you to turn to the right, navel towards the right, lift the right arm up, breathe. Okay, I know the knee might shift back, but you're trying to keep it just above the ankle. And then lower the right hand down. So you're really loading into that right leg strength. Shift forward, step the left foot besides the right. Take a forward bend of choice. It could be blocks in front of you and feeling almost like you're tipping back into your heels. This is kind of fun to do sometimes. Change it up, your forward motion. It's an interesting lumbar balance though. So you decide, maybe you want to just let your head lower down and hold your elbows and traction your back. This is good too. But feel the ribs moving with the breath, whichever your choice is. Dangling or block support. This feels better for my spine, although it's not as fun. Okay. Now coming out, use your blocks, step the right foot back, and we're going to keep it so that left knee is above the ankle. We're going to slide the blocks in under the hand so they're at the appropriate balance for you. It could be they're lower. If you're really tall, you might go, or maybe you like them a little higher, one side different than the next. So feel where that back leg is reaching into the heel. Left knee above the ankle. Press down. Okay, now this time feel if you arch the spine, like you try to reach the ribs forward and then turn to the left. Now maybe you have a little bit more room to more spaciousness. So if I don't do that and I'm here, kind of stacked, and then I twist, I don't really have as much juice to move, it seems. So just think about the movement. You don't have to dance into your poses, but kind of notice the directional balance and let that back heel push. Okay, good job. Let the left hand lower down. Doing pretty good. And now this time what we'll do is we'll pivot. So I want you to turn to the right, toes in, turn to the right side of your mat, and then get a feel of this wide stance. Yeah, think about the reach of the feet And what happens if they turn in a little bit? They could be parallel, that could be better for some of us. But notice the difference in the stretch around the knee. I would keep it manageable with the blocks. Just let them hold you up so you're able to coordinate the legs. Because once I lower down, the energy goes higher up in the back of my leg. Okay. So now we're going to turn to the chair. So your blocks are unnecessary now. So I'm going to turn, pivot my back foot. So both feet have to pivot to the wall. The right foot is under the chair. You don't need your blanket. So when you get time to move it, that's whenever you don't need it for sure, you'll move it. But really work with that feel of the back calf stretching. I really like this one. So this is right in the timing I wanted today for getting right to this one. It's perfect. How could we have done that? So both feet, got two. You came into the class with two, so you're still managing them. But the back leg, you're stretching into the calf. And notice the load you put into your hands. See if you can reach through the spine, arch the spine, stretch the back calf. Feel a little bend of the right knee. Balancing. Okay, keep it simple. All right, so now I want you to get a feel of sliding that right foot so you can see it right directly underneath you, right? It's not under the chair. And lift the back heel and start to take the balance. So the right leg, hopefully the foot stays parallel. If you're too close to the wall and you feel a little scared of hitting the wall with your head, you could take the chair a little bit away. This isn't one where your foot's touching the wall, so it would be manageable for balance. But you want the chair underneath you, okay? So you want to feel like you can stretch the torso forward and then turn the left hip open so the left foot lifts a little bit and your right elbow could be on the chair if you don't like the feeling of the wrist being pressed down. If I'm a little bit away from the chair, I can hold the back of the chair or I can touch the wall. This is a good one to play with because you're eventually going to lose it on this pose. Like you'll lose your balance at some point the more you toy with it. But it's a nice way to find moments of balance and imbalance, imperfection. So yeah, so you can move the chair. You can even put a block, I suppose, on the chair if this is too low. Give it a try, launch into it there. There you go. Okay, lower the left hand down. And I want you to hold the chair sides, lower the left foot, step the right foot back and lean forward so you're arching, lengthening the torso. Inhale, exhale, step back into down dog in the chair pose, right? So you lift chair and stretching the chest. Yeah, look at the knees, right? Are they pressing? Do they start to turn inwards? Really feel where the heels are planted. Even a little bit more of a tiny bit of toes turning in to set your pelvis. Okay. All right, now lift your head and shift the body weight gradually into the hands. Okay, so you're going to step the left foot forward. Now this side we're kind of resetting again. Okay, so the right foot is stretching back. We're not balancing yet. So take your time. Your foot could be under the chair. You're working on stretching that right calf. Right, and the right calf has nothing to do with the balance that we're going towards. So it's different pose. Levelize your hips. So if your right hip is kind of pulling you back, see if you can shift it forward a notch. Lengthen the torso. Okay, now slide the left foot so you can see it underneath you and you'll bend the left knee. And once you start lifting that back heel, yeah, you could go into it this way where you lift the right leg and then turn, okay? Another way you could go into this is by standing upright and lifting up in the chest and using momentum. right? Because momentum makes it a little bit, you have to trust your balance though, right? Because you don't want to be tossing yourself off to the side on the ground. But if I'm down with the hands and then I kick up, it's a little arduous, I think. It's kind of challenging. So this inner thigh, right? Most of us, this is a place to really do work, is the adductors. Okay, so push into the left heel, lift up into that right side. And it just happens to be an important area to work when you're doing yin yoga, right? The adductor line, liver, kidney, spleen, meridians. Okay, so if you're a little trembly on one side more than the other, notice the hip. Right, take one more time where you lower down. I want you to just do this for curiosity. Take the right foot beside the left, kick the left foot up and turn, and just feel with your hands on the chair or the back bar of the chair. Just notice if this hip, how the stability is on a scale of 1 to 10. If it has shakiness in you can feel into the hip, and then shift the other side and just kind of feel what side you have, you know, a little more tension, a little more challenge with your flexibility, stiffness. Usually if there's stiffness, there's going to be more shakiness in the actual hip itself. Yeah. Okay, now come back so that the feet step back and you have them on the lift on the toes. So you're pushing into the balls of the feet, lifting your heels. And then you're going to lean forward. So both of my hands are on the chair and I'm stretching the torso. Okay. Okay, now simple, lower your knees down, okay, to the floor. And then we're going to come down all the way to sitting right in front of the chair. Okay, take a ball, take a blanket behind you. You'll be able to unfold it in a few moments. Have a belt. You'll need those things. You'll need 2 blocks. I would have them probably at the second setting so they'll be easy to drag across. Click and drag. Okay, so lean into it. You're going to lower on your back and you're going to lower down so that your feet are touching the chair edge, the side of it, the seat. Okay. Gotta get my chair anatomy down. Sometimes I got it, sometimes it's gone. Okay, so I have the ball between the knees and take a few moments of breathing here where you decide, okay, blanket too high. I do like one, but I definitely don't want it to push my chin up. But you know, some people that's the only way to do it, right? They cannot have their head back without more blanket. So it's completely individual. If you need more blanket, just take it. So let the back completely feel like it kind of flattens out. Feel the crease at the hips. Try to isolate those two so it's my back, lengthen, my torso relaxed, my belly moves with the breath. And then what I find interesting is the top of the thigh connection. I'm trying to relax that a bit. Like you're sinking into the femur heads. Okay. Now, as you inhale, your hands could be relaxed anywhere. I would probably put them down by the sides so the palms are down. As you inhale, feel the belly fill. And as you exhale, feel that you move the knees in closer. Squeeze the ball. Inhale, relax the grip. Exhale, squeeze the ball. Okay. Now, when you relax the grip, this time we're going to push into the feet, lift the hips up. And this is where the blanket thing is probably, it's very evident that too much height won't be good because it curls that upper spine and it creates that roundedness. So this is what we use to keep a nice stretch in the neck is very little height, if any. You can go without me. But lift the hips up. Let the arms stay in this kind of funky position because it's awkward for the shoulder to be here, but it's an interesting stretch. and lower down the spine. Okay, now this time you'll move your arms with the lift. So you'll lift the hips and the arms, stretch the arms back. Try to really reach into the arms if it's possible. Like there's something behind you you're trying to get, because that helps stretch both sides of the spine. Then lower down the spine, then the arms. They're the last to go. Okay, feel the arch of the spine. Inhale, push and lift and stretch back. I felt like that was the first one I really did right. Exhale, lower the spine. Okay, one more time. When you lift, feel the arms, they go fast, right? It's the bulk of the body that takes time. And it's kind of critical here that when you get the lift that, okay, I feel a lot in my legs, the arms are back. And then noticing if there's one side of the back that has a little bit more, different density. I can sometimes feel one side has, some differences in different pockets of the body. So when you're feeling that lift, try to get the front of the hips to lift as high as you can go. I know it's an incredible amount of leg strength to do this. It's not easy, right? To get this lift, this oomph to get the lift up. Okay, so feel where the muscles of the glutes are completely cement at this point. Okay, now relax the buttocks when your hips are still up. It probably drops you a little bit. And then when you lower down, vertebrae chain, right, lowers down. Okay, now I want you to feel like you can push into the chair seat. Okay, the ball is just there, right? So remove it. You need to squeeze your knees in to remove it, that's fine. And then take a block. Okay, I'm gonna get both of them. I'm gonna get one on each side of my hip. Just kind of have my little bumper blocks, just in case I fall out. All right, so I got my bumper blocks. I'm gonna pack them next to my hip. It's not gonna do much good there, is it? But what I'm working with here is I'm pushing the block. The block is on second setting. It's right next to my hip. I'm kind of pushing in. Okay, I want the block to stay on the ground. I don't want it to fling in and tilt. Okay, now when I push into my feet, I'm going to scoop the tailbone under. Be real delicate about it because you want to go slow so you get a good bridge pose. So you're going to lift up, good pelvic floor work. And then notice when the blocks can reach underneath you, just when it gets to that height, like it's still a little bit of your clothing's getting snatched up into the blocks, but you'll scoot the blocks a little bit higher, but they don't go any higher than the ribs, right? There's no ribs pressing into the blocks, they're the lumbars. So then lower down your hips completely. Maybe you didn't have to do much pushing. Okay, blanket is only under your skull, not under your shoulders at all. And then I want you to lift both feet up. So you've got the block set. If you have some deep need to have your hips higher, you are certainly welcome to put your feet back on the chair, push into your feet, lift up and see if you can get your block higher, stack them up higher. You could do all kinds of things, but I like the standard width of the blocks right now. It's not that wide, but if I touch around my hip, they're not all on the block. There's a little bit of this contour. So I want you to feel the legs as close together as they could be. Like there's no closer they can go. Zipping them up. Okay. Relax the feet. Try not to flex them right now, just let them be. And this way, it's almost like your feet are like it's like an exclamation point here. You're trying to reach them up though. You're trying to get them to fly up towards the ceiling. It's the most interesting thing for your inner body, right, to work with, reversing the flow of gravity to your heart. So good for the heart, right, to get the legs upside down. And so your neck lengthens, don't overdo it, no extra blankets here. And then feel, once you're in vertical, the legs should not be over your head. They should not be all the way to the wall. And the hip flexors should be pretty comfy. You could kind of reach with your fingers and kind of scratch that top of the thigh towards the hip flexor. Make sure that skin, it's going the opposite direction. Well, of course it is because you're upside down, but all the flow in the legs is reversing, right? Opposite of prolapse. Okay, now let your arms rest down by the sides. Palms are relaxed. They don't have to be specifically open, just what's natural for you. But feel if you can roll your shoulder, the part that you can roll, around and in towards the center of the back. It might just be a tiny bit that happens. The hands might kind of fling out when you do that because you're trying to pin the elbows in. You know, reach your hands towards each other because they can only go so close with the blocks here. So see if you can get a hold of the blocks with your hands and kind of push into the block with the hands so the feet, the legs tilt forward towards the chair. And then bend the knees. This is important to bend them before you lower them to the chair. And then let the legs release down on the chair. So the legs rest on the chair. Okay, keep the blocks there. You don't have to pull them anymore. You might decide, I'm gonna rest my hands. You know, one leg might be more tone in the calf than the other. So see if you can relax the energy around the knees. And then eventually you're going to come into cobbler's pose, but take your time. So noticing the circulation in the back of the body. First, that should feel healthy and the circulation should feel comfortable before you add. And then what I like to do is take my non-dominant leg first. That steps in. Okay, and then I push into that foot and slide the other foot next to it, and then the knees move out. Yeah, there's something about the dominant leg and the hip flexor, and there might be. So the thigh muscles have a ways to go. It's a long way to the floor. They're not going to touch down, but the blocks could be helpful here. Under your pelvis. And if you decide, I don't want the blocks anymore, it's too much stretch, you can always bring the knees to point up. You can take the blocks out, lower the hips down, bring the knees out, and then place the blocks over the upper sides of the thighs this way. Yeah, I like this way. This is good. I like this one. I like them both. The other one's a little more extreme for the stretch, but I'm interested in, trying other things out and just kind of feel how this balances my hips. I know it's a trial every time you do this, right? From another class and another class. Next thing you know, it's been 30 years. Okay, so get a feel of the support, whether you got blocks under your pelvis or the blocks are under the legs. You can always try this and then go back to the blocks under the pelvis. This just is putting a dent in my leg. Okay, and let the basin of the pelvis, so if your hips are on the ground, this is a little easier in some ways of the deep stretch in the groins. And if my blocks are under, I have a little more stretch in my low back. It's more comfortable. Let's just take a few more moments before we shift out of this pose. And we're going to do some drawbridges after this. So get a feel of how the knees have motioned out. Okay, the hamstrings are going to wake up again, so we'll bring the knees to point up. If you've got a block underneath your hips, you're going to lift your hips a little bit and slide them out. And then at this point, I want you to take, actually, let's go ball free. Okay, so we'll push our feet and then try to push down when you lift the hips up. Let's take about 4 motions. So it's about 4 kind of pumps, you could say, in the hamstrings. And I feel it's not a stretch in them at all, right? It's a strength. So when you push down, your knees might wobble a little bit. You might kind of go back and forth. So you're trying to keep them kind of determined on a path, right? They stay in line with your lift. Okay. Now we're going to take a single block under the pelvis, just one flat block. It's flat. This is important, but it's got to be flat. Okay, under the back of your pelvis, get your belt, let your hips rest on the block. Key is rest. Okay. Now left leg is on the chair. Now if you decide, I wish I was closer to my chair, well, get closer. Right? You might scoot a little bit closer to the wall because you like the feeling of your opposite leg resting the calf on the chair. I want to rest my calf. Okay. You can even be more pampered and put a blanket on the chair if you like. Okay, so grab or a warm towel. Okay. All right, so get a belt and place it under your right foot and stretch the leg up. And once the leg is lifted, or what you consider a lifted leg, you're going to pull and make it a good amount of effort here. Dedicate it. So move the leg back till you go, oh, okay. Some of you might go, I need to switch my left leg closer to the chair. So you really feel your calf kind of pinned down, stretching that leg back. You could put a sandbag on your left leg. I feel like that would just be too much. So I'm going to stick with this. But feel where that motion is of your hands pulling, the calf stretching, and moving the right leg back towards the right side of your torso. Okay, you should feel the calf stretching right on that right leg. Make sure the belt is right under the ball of the foot so you can enhance that experience in the calf. Okay, bend that right knee. Okay, and feel where you are on the block, right where you're pressing. Open up the chest, inhale. And exhale, push the foot just to vertical, like you have with legs up. And it's not pulling it back. And bring the left foot up into the belt. So simple. And notice the difference in the calves. It's probably a slight difference in circulation. Right, we're kind of spending all our energy on getting our spacious inside, right? That's the kind of what we're up to here at these classes. So pushing into props helps us out. And now lower the right leg, keep the belt under the left foot. Notice how your calf lands and that on the chair. It just got a good stretch. And it might be pretty comfy. And then noticing when you pull with the hands on the belt and how close your hands go up, how far they go down, is all up to you. If you decide, well, I'm going to wrap the belt around my hand, that's fine. This is different than brain float, right? This is definitely more direct in the muscle. So pull the leg back, and it's not a competition like, oh, I've got to get my leg there. That's where it should be. I should keep going. Well, find where the circulation is steeped on as much of the back of that leg before it starts jittery. You don't want to get too jittery and the pose are shaky, do you? A little bit is okay, but it doesn't seem to be accomplishing connection if it's shaking. And I feel a little inner shake around my calf, a little bit, but it's not necessarily visible. But when I pull, I can feel the circulation in there. Challenge. A little bit behind the knee as well. So little micro bend, not much. Still work on leg extension. And then as you feel your hands pulling the leg back, the left leg, feel the foot flexing. Let it know it's a really good foot. You can talk to your foot. So when you feel that you're flexing your foot, start to work with moving the leg straight up from the hip, Last time we did it by bending, didn't we? Yeah, we bent and we pushed up. So kind of feel when you're lifting into that left foot, then switch to bring the right leg up again, okay? And see if you can push your feet into the belt forward. Right, so you're not vertical, you're leaning forward. You've probably done these core exercises before, but maybe not on a block. Maybe that's the difference. So my legs are together as close as they could be. I'm letting the legs go from 90 degrees downwards. Maybe they go down towards 60, probably 40 is a bit much. They're not going to go to the chair. Okay, now grab the belt so it's like you barely have a hold of it. And you're going to let the legs go. Okay, now feel where the hips are in control. Now some of us are going to just toss it out in the belly, right? That the belly gets kind of tossed. You don't want tossed salad in the belly here. You want to feel now that the heels try to separate a little bit, even though the belts are on the feet. Strengthen the core. Belly relaxes with the breath. It's still being a belly, right? It doesn't have to change. And then when you come back up, then bend through the legs. Take the belt off and let's bring our feet to the chair and lift the hips up. Slide that block now that you have a dent in your back from it probably, huh? And as you lift up the hips, try to let the hands hold the sides of the hips, just the side, not under the back or in the front, just the sides where you can use the that web space between the thumb and the index finger. That can be kind of helpful. But I usually use my thumb quite a bit to prompt the hips to go up, right? As if my thumb is strong enough to hold my hips, huh? All right, okay. Here we go, we're gonna give it a try. We're gonna do one-legged bridge. So you're lifting. Okay, I don't want you to take the feet too close together if you can possibly keep them apart. Then you're gonna push into your left foot, and also this whole leg has to stay strong. And you're gonna lift the right leg. And just let the knee be in the same line as the left knee, not up, no, we're straight forward. Simple hip strength. Then bring the right foot down. My knee tends to kind of push up, bring it back, stable on the right glute, left leg stretches. Oh, it's so much work. Use your elbows by your sides like they're these little robot arms. Lower the left foot, take one more on the right side. It's only temporary. Okay, if the knee lowers down, you got to bring it back up because that's a tendency. And then bring the right foot down. Nothing wrong with tendencies. Stretch the left leg up, one-legged bridge, glutes, hip strength. Yep, your hands might be in a fist, your hands might be open. How is that going? It's challenging. And then lower the left foot down and stretch your arms back and lower the hips all the way and let the waist stretch. Good. Okay. All right. So settle the knees in towards the chest. Go side to side and then massaging in the back. Keep it really basic. Side to side motion. Basic motion. Massaging not the sacrum as much as each back hip layer, right? It's the posterior hip. Posterior hip. Floors are nice for massaging your body on. If you just get the right movement, you can get a little bit of support. Okay, before we come up into the next phase, let's get the ball. I should have used this, but I should have, could have, now I'm going to. Okay, so it's under the left glute and massage into that. Okay, go both sides at your own pace. So you want to go one glute at a time. And it's not necessarily glute only, right? You might roll the hip. But the nice thing is that the chair height is very helpful for the body weight to push into the ball. If I have my feet at this height and I really cruise down into the ball, it's kind of perfect actually for self-massages to have your feet on the chair and then the ball under, and then you have that right amount of circulation. So glide across the tissues. You might have one hip you favor on this massage and the other. Might be one tricky spot. It just feels good to get the tissues gliding in motion. Okay. Now, when you do come around to get up, we're going to be doing a wide stance seated shape. So feel the knees out now. So just kind of notice the knees are out, your hands at the back of the legs. Just notice that the leg muscles maybe don't really feel a stretch here. Might not be a leg stretch, which is easy. Okay, rock side to side to come up. So you're gonna roll to come up, and you're gonna take a, let's see, we can put the chair away. Away it goes. You're gonna need a blanket. I think 2 would be good. Let's just do 2. So we're going to take a blanket into a fold. So it's a quarter fold. Or maybe some people call it a tri-fold, I'm not sure. But then you'll take another blanket on top. I know this might seem easy peasy, but let's just do it. Sit on it. Take your feet out to a wide stance, kind of like our knees just were. You're going to have a block that's low, and then you're going to have a block that's high in front. You got to kind of push them away because guess what? Your bolster goes on top. So you have a ramp. Okay. So now what I want you to do is lean forward, and you do kind of want to be on the blankets though. So you do want to feel like your sitting bones are on the blankets. You lean forward. The goal is to get your body on the bolster. Okay. If you go forward and you go, I am not going to hug my bolster today, then you pull your props in closer and your bolster as well. If this doesn't work, which is pretty deep stretch, I think, is you could put your blocks, the bottom block closer to you higher, right? You could be here. This works. Maybe it looks too easy, but for some of us, this is the way it'll be, you know, it's just the way it'll go for the pose. And some of us might tilt the bottom block and have the bolster on it and lean forward, so it's a little more height. Some of us, the bolster will be on the floor, right, next to your thighs. So take your head so it turns in one direction, or have your forehead on the bolster. If this is excruciating for your leg muscles, just bend the knees and hug the bolster. It's pretty low though, isn't it? This is a pretty deep stretch. I don't know what I'm getting into with this, huh? Okay, so it's a wide stance, right? The legs are wide, whether the knees are bending or the feet are out, it's a leg circulation dynamic. So give it a few moments. We'll just be here for about a minute on this one. Okay, your head can turn to the other side if you have your head turned left, turn right, or vice versa. Okay, feeling which knee, right? One knee might go down a little bit more. It might be smoother on the back of one knee than the other if your legs are straight-ish. And kind of notice, you know, what knee is feeling like the circulation around it is stiffer, that we're working with that. You try to let the weight sink in your sitting bones. Okay, now push into your hands, coming up. Let's take side stage. So we're gonna move our props a little bit around, but you have your blankets back under your seat. So I propose this idea is that you'll take your bolster to the side, your blocks, one might go behind you, one will not be needed again. Slide the feet together, scoot off the blanket, and then turn to your left hip. Turn the bolster, slide it into the mat, and then let your body lean. Now this is finally a sandbag moment. The next 5 final poses will be sandbags. Okay, so place the sand on the side of the body, the right side, have the ball on the inside of the right leg. It doesn't have to be some perfect balance, like, oh, it's exactly what I thought it would all be but you want to work on this length of your side. I actually love having my foot against the wall for this one. Feels good. It feels really good. It's a warm spot. I can tell that's why the cat likes to be there. It's a warm spot at the wall. You know, where the reach is in the torso might be the feature of the ribs. If my arm is on my side or on my bolster, I have to work on the feature of deep breathing to get the ribs to motion. You know, really work with that balance of the bend of the knees, the stretch of that right thigh. Don't have to go very far back. And the lead of weight, the weight like the lead weight of that left hip down. If your arm is overhead, it might be on a block, it might be on your side. You know, let's take a horizontal chest opener in between. So slide the sand, keep it right near you, roll onto your back, and let your back be on the bolster and the blankets under your head and the sand across the ribs. Right, so the spinal set is extremely clear, right? So we have the knees bending, I'm creeping my feet towards my seat, and my tailbone is tiny bit up off the ground. It's like hovering, but it's just a little bit up. I could feel my rear on the floor, but I'm not completely committed to the deepest arch in my back. I'm just trying to keep it so my ribs get that circulation in my lungs with the sand. Take a few breaths. You don't have to use your sand on this one. Mindfulness, focus. Roll to the right rib, bring right ribs up. Bring the sand to the side. Decide if you want to have your ball on the inside of that left leg. And use the balance here of the musculature right through the ribs as you reach that left arm over. Let the weight of your head rest into the blankets. And just feel that arch right through the spine. The right leg can tuck towards the bolster, right? The leg closest to the bolster should be bending a lot, right? And that fields the circulation of the right hip a little better. And just noticing, try to scan how this left leg is stretching from the hip down to the knee. Because we're going to balance that stretch motion of the hip joint out completely here. So take about 3 more breaths. The left arm could be overhead, it could be on your side. Enjoy your breath, especially when it's breathing well. Okay, slide the sand to the left and roll to the right. Place your bolster to the right side of your mat. Take a crossover so that I lower back And I do the opposite with my knee. No blankie here. One blanket under my head and bring the left leg that we just had reaching back over to the bolster, ball to the sacrum area, sand on the outer left leg. Closer to the knee is going to be safer for your knee joint, but everyone's different with their decision on this one. If they use a sandbag at all, if it's too much, don't use the sand. But feel where that crossover, the movement of the hip is crossing, and we're trying to bring it back into its net balance, towards the very end of class here. Okay, your hands could be where they're comfortable. It's so focused on the hip and the lower back that you don't have to do a wild reach with the arms. You could let them relax on your core. Feel where it's comfortable for you right now. Maybe it is spreading the arms out. You just need that work so much for your posture. I can understand that. This interesting last pose, we got that focus with the knee, the side sage pulling up to the bolster. And this one, you can feel that right knee. It's best to have it bending a little bit. And the weight is in that right hip still. Right? It's left hip weighted, but the density, like the bone density work is in the right hip because it's the bottom one. Okay, and then switch it to the other side. And with the ball moving, center the knees. Be very specific about the transition so it's clean. Right? Not a lot of shifting around with the knees or the hip or the back, but center the bolster now over to the left, and then right leg swings over. And it's okay to be kind of a little bit closed in with your rotation, so you're supporting your core. You feel the movement out of that right hip over to the left, to the bolster, the ball maybe to the sacrum, and then the sand, and then you'll find, oh, okay, second side, balancing. So there's a real nucleus that you're trying to support right now. Getting more deeper into the center of yourself. And feeling where that hip has that motion into that right hip. And even though it's still, it looks pretty still to me. Right? There's quite a lot of energy going on into the hip right now. So much happens with the breath. Keep that breath moving. Nothing happens if you're not breathing, right? So you want to continue charging the system. Now feel where the heart, the upper ribs is fairly relaxed. So we want to continue that calm in that zone. So we're reversing the flow of gravity to the heart and the brain in the next pose. So when we slide the sand away, we're going to roll left, take your bolster to your wall. Keep it like you're in a trance, kind of, you're like focused. We've got our wall, we got our bolster, we got our blankets, we got more blankets, you got warm socks, you have an eye pillow maybe. And then when you sit up on your bolster, you're going to push yourself very close to the wall with your rear. You can always get better at this one. Just seems to always be something to refine. But when I lean up, I'm going to be careful that I swing the legs up and not so knee evident pressure. I just swing up, so then I turn, get my blanket under me, and then shift very little, right? So I feel my heels at the wall. And then some people pull their bolster up to their back. And that kind of feels good sometimes. Some of us will say, oh no, we got to have our bolster right next to the wall. And I have to get there. But, you know, it's about how it feels in your body, not how it looks. I mean, the look is somewhat important, I guess, some of the poses, but go for feeling that the ribs are lifting and the heart is centered and relaxed. There should be a rib full. So, like, notice the ribs are expansive on this pose. Get a sandbag. If you don't have a sandbag, it is fine for this one. You don't have to use one. Some people prefer no sand on their feet for legs up. Okay, it's up to you. Well, it's up to your feet. Okay, and then when you design that motion of the legs lifting, and maybe add some blanket on your torso, maybe it's all the way up towards the chest. You can tuck the blanket in, and then balance the focus here with the shoulders resting. There might be some help if you can kind of roll them back and under, but my assumption is they're going to slide back out. So don't overdo your work there. Okay, the work is in reversing the flow of gravity to the heart and the brain. And then with the belly moving with the breath to rest the organs from gravity's downward pull. It's really important here to let the organs kind of be bathed in that movement. That the womb of breath, right? You want to feel the belly move the organs, even though you don't have any sensory kind of attachment, right, to feeling your liver. It would be a little too dynamic if that was the case, huh? So find existence with your eyes closed, returning the body to balance. Feel the breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. If you can focus on nostril breathing on both sides of the breath, it can be really centering. And it's also using your natural filter for breathing, right? Your nose. Arms could be down, arms could be goalpost, arms could be resting on you. Now connect to the back of the pelvis, the tailbone, feeling that relaxing. And once we've made it to this, right, this is a success, right, to get your legs up in this orientation, to reverse the gravitational pull. It's great for the pelvic floor, great for the organs, and most importantly, the heart and the lungs. So noticing when we shift to upright, if there is an actual feeling shift in the body. So just take a moment here, kind of notice this. What I notice is generally the circulation in my face changes, right? Because this is a nice, it puts pressure, skin cells of the face get a little bit of warmth when you're upside down. It's clearly vibrant, right, for the face to be upside down. Just notice that, let that be why you do this, it could be. Shift the feet off the wall, bend the knees. You can let your sand be tossed, or you can reach for it. I can't hear you if you toss your sand, so it's okay. And then when you feel that cuddled position of the back, lengthening the knees, moving in, I want you to rock a little side to side before you roll up to sitting, and then balance the movement of the spine. Remember, be careful, right? When you swing over, you want to be somewhat squeezed in so the back doesn't get pulled out here. So we roll and then use the hands to bring you up to sitting and crossing or feet together in diamond. This can be nice sometimes too. Diamond is good. And let the hips balance down. Bring your hands up to meet in front of the heart. Feel them pull into the heart so that the head can lower down, surrendering to the heart. And just plant a moment, a seed inside of yourself, gratitude, breathing and wellness. To each of us in practice here and outwards, exhale, namaste.